Now let's get into talking about session tempo and identify beat. I have a workspace open with a loop in it. So before we actually go into the session, I want to give you the concept of identify beat. I've got the workspace open. I'm going to make sure that I have the volume fader in the workspace down a little bit so that the loop doesn't play back too loudly. I'm also going to make sure that I have the conform to tempo disabled in the workspace. I also like to use loop preview and spacebar toggles file preview for my workspace. So if I hit spacebar, I can preview the loop in the workspace. Then I'm going to take this and drag it into the tracks list of the session, and I am not going to import the original tempo. Adjust my track height a little bit. Couple things that I want to do. I want to turn the volume down on the track so the loop doesn't play back too loudly. I also want to make sure that I have my link timeline and edit selection and link track and edit selection buttons enabled. And I want to make sure that I have the insertion follows playback button disabled. Over on the right side of the screen, I want to make sure that I have my conductor enabled in the MIDI controls. I need the conductor enabled to make sure that I can use identify beat. Then I'm going to go over here and look at my ruler view selector. Up at the top, these are the time-based rulers. Down below the line, these are conductor rulers. I'm going to enable tempo, meter, and key. Default tempo is 120. Default key is C major. Default meter is 4/4. I'll go over and enable the metronome, and I'll hit play. And there's no metronome because you'll remember that by default there's no click track in the session. So we'll create the click track. Move it to the top of the session, right click and hide it. If you want to have a click track in every session that you create, you can go to your preferences, go to the MIDI tab, and you can enable this preference for automatically create click track in new sessions. Now, the next Pro Tools session that you create will have a click track in it by default. The other thing you'll want to check is you want to make sure that you have loop playback enabled. So if I go up to the transport and right click, I do have loop playback enabled. I can also grab that from the options menu. Loop playback shortcut is Shift Command L. Remember that you need to have at least a half-second selection in order for loop playback to function. So let's listen to the click and hear how it sounds. The click doesn't lock, so we're going to have to use identify beat. So I'm going to take the selector tool and double-click the loop. So what I have is I have an edit selection. I'm going to listen to the loop. I want to make sure that this selection loop's clean. Just as much as I have a selection across the entire loop, this could be a selection that was this much, or I might make this much of a selection. But if I'm trying to do identify beat, I have to make sure that selection loop's clean. So since I'm using a loop that I've imported, I'm going to double click that and I'm going to listen to it and make sure that it's a clean loop all the way around. While I'm doing that, I'm thinking in my head, okay, I'm going to count this. I'm going to see how many bars this loop is. Turn the metronome off. So it does loop clean. I'm hearing this as 4 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1. So it's 4 bars. Now I'll go up to the event menu, choose identify beat. The clip starts at bar 1. That's correct, but the end location is wrong. I counted that as 4 bars. So the end of bar 4 is the beginning of bar 5. So my end location is bar 5. Now I'll enable the metronome, hit play, and the click locks. And you can see Pro Tools changed the tempo. Right here, Pro Tools changed the tempo to match the tempo of the clip. It's no longer the default of 120 beats per minute. Now let's go look at the session and see how we can use identify beat in the remix session.